Okay, it looks like we are live. Hello out there. Hello to all of you joining our live session. My name is Leah Gage, and I'm the program manager at VegFund. And with me is...
Hi, I'm Mikki Wilburn, and I'm the program officer at VegFund. It's exciting to chat with all of you again.
I know, we really miss you. Looks like people are trickling in. Yeah, we had actually had all these great plans for 2020 to go and visit, to go look at VegFest going on that we fund and try to visit other grantees and get to know you all. And then obviously we were thwarted. We're very excited that we can at least join you virtually. So as people are trickling in, Mikki and I will just give a quick introduction to ourselves. As I said, I'm Leah. I'm the program manager. I've been at VegFund for just over 3 years. And my job as program manager is to review grant applications. I'm often one of the first people who receives special projects and online campaigns applications. I do a lot of emailing and managing relationships with all of our grantees and people who are interested in applying. And every now and then I get to do something fun like an AMA or a webinar. It's a wonderful job. Mikki, you want to give an intro?
Sure. So I'm Mikki. I am the program officer here at VegFund. I've been with them for about 2 years now. So my day-to-day tasks include a lot of grantee interaction. So I'm emailing you guys a lot and chatting with you throughout the day. I also review a large portion of our grants and reports. So I run the community events program. So I'm the person who will look at all of those applications that come in. And then I also gather and analyze the data that you guys submit. So when we ask you to submit a report or an application, we actually take that information and look at it and monitor trends and see what we can get out of what you provide to us.
Yes, that's right. All of the reporting that we ask you all to do is not fully futile. In fact, it really helps inform our work and helps us understand what strategies for vegan activism are working and what strategies need support, what we can offer in terms of resources and things like that. So yes, we definitely appreciate all of the data. Looks like we have, oh, hello from Australia. Great to see you. I'm seeing some comments now. I do see a comment about no video with supported format. I'm not sure, maybe try a different browser, but hopefully it's working for most of you. So this is an AMA, which means ask me anything. So we're here to answer your questions and we want to have a dialogue as much as possible. But we also, want to tee it up and offer some thoughts on what's been going on with us and some recommendations, especially around COVID-19. The other thing we want to say is that this is an opportunity to ask about your projects, to talk about how to make your application as successful as possible. But unfortunately, we can't really give you a yes or no answer on today's AMA as to whether or not your grant will definitely be approved by VegFund. That's a process that we use a process to review all the grants, and that's for everyone's benefit because we want it to be as objective as possible. So please do ask questions about your projects, and we'll give you the best answer that we possibly can without being able to really say whether or not we can certainly tell you if an application will be approved. Cool. So, Mikki, do you want to talk a bit about community events grants and how those are working now that we have our new grant management system?
Yeah, absolutely. So we went live with Zingen, which is our new grant management system, back in September. So if you guys have been submitting applications, you should be familiar with that now. So there was a little bit of a change with our grant structure along with that change in grant management system. So one change is the community event grant. It was formerly known as community outreach, but we mixed it up a little bit. So now it still encompasses the same types of grants like food sampling and VegFest and pay-per-view and film screenings, those good classic vegan activism tactics. One change is now we also include some learning events under the community event category. So what this category is meant for are those one-time events. And by one time, we don't necessarily mean single day events. It could take place over a weekend or over a week, but it's just one event. And it's where you're getting out and interacting with people. So if it's a learning event, maybe it's a conference, or you're setting up on the sidewalk and you're giving out food samples. It's where you're getting out and really interacting with people and teaching them about veganism and exposing them to it. So we do accept those applications and reports on a rolling basis. So when you come up with an idea, you can go in any day of the year and submit an application. It can take up to about 4 weeks to have a turnaround time because we do receive a lot of applications and a lot of reports constantly throughout the year. So since we are a small team, it takes us time to really get in there and look and review every detail of every application. So it can take up to about 4 weeks. And sometimes we'll send the applications back to you and ask for clarifications or ask for changes. So the quicker that you guys resubmit after that, the quicker we can keep processing your application. Right now with COVID-19, we have reopened our applications to allow for in-person events. So if you are submitting an in-person event, we do ask that you provide the information for your local guidelines regarding COVID-19 precautions, and then how you're going to go about respecting those and making sure everybody stays safe in the event.
Yep, exactly. We're seeing changes, especially outside of the United States. You know, we recognize that not everybody is in the same situation that we're in. You know, still feeling like it's in total lockdown. So, yeah, and who knows? You know, it remains to be seen what will happen this year as far as things opening up again.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Well. So I want to talk a bit about special projects and online campaigns and how those deadlines are coming up, but we've had a couple of questions. So I just want to address them. The first thing, I see Liz Gary is here from the San Diego area, and Liz, great to see you. Thanks for joining. And it sounds like she's offering some advice. She actually did a webinar for us a couple years ago that was fabulous, talking about how to turn your passion for vegan activism into an actual career, which she has done. So definitely take a look at her comment, and if you want some advice, especially how to reach kids in schools, she's got a really great model for doing that. And it looks like we see, okay, Hunter asks, do you offer monthly assistance or a one-time grant? Well, this is a great opportunity to plug the Special Projects Grant Program. So this is, you know, if you've been an activist with us before, you may have applied for an innovative outreach grant or a learning events and tools grant. And what we really did is just kind of took those all and decided that any project that's more long-term, that's consistent outreach over time, those should fall into the special projects category and that application. All of this is on our website, and it's much easier to see, I think, on the page itself. But essentially, the special projects allows us to make grants over time. So if not monthly, then maybe quarterly installments. We sort of determine that based on the needs of the activists when they apply. And in return, we just ask for periodic reporting. So depending on your project, Hunter, I think you could definitely qualify for funding over the course of time. Monthly is something we do often for our online campaigns grantees. And that's usually more about promoting ads, promoting a vegan challenge, for example, and we tend to pay those monthly. But to answer your question, essentially, yes, we can do both. We can do a one-time event. It really sort of depends on the project and what we think will make your project most successful. Let's see. We also see we are looking from Doctors for Nutrition. We're looking to, at applying for a grant for a longer program work related to the Australian Dietary Guidelines updates. It's 3 years long. So would you recommend applying in phases? Absolutely. VegFund sets our budget each year. And while we know that a lot of projects will have a longer term than just 1 year, we typically do ask our applicants for those longer term projects to reapply every year. For the main reason that things change, and that's okay, and we understand that. And so having that new updated information each year is really helpful for us to review against our budget. So yeah, I would recommend that you apply, and also in the application, make the case that this is a long-term project and that you are trying to plan for the future and that you have a plan in place for multiple years. We love to see that, and especially if you plan on doing a long-term project, then we want to see that. We want to see that there is an idea for how that will be implemented and rolled out. Let's see. So right now, Lauren, to answer your question, right now we're only doing questions over chat. So if you don't mind to just type in the questions here, that's helpful to us. In the past, when we've opened it up, it's often, there's a lot of sound issues and delay issues, and so hopefully this will be okay for you to just ask in the comments. Hello from India. Some of the best of the details to share in an application, okay, to avoid back and forth. Yeah, absolutely. So if you've applied for a grant from VegFund, you'll know maybe that if there's a question we have, we'll send your application back to you. It will become editable again, and we'll include questions in the email. And Mikki, do you want to address like some common things that you think we can look at to make sure your application isn't sent back multiple times?
Yeah, so really the more detail that you provide from the get-go, the better it's going to be, because we really like to see all of your information, like a clear description of what the event is. We like to see clear budget breakdown, so how much money are you expecting to spend and exactly what are you going to be spending it on? What's your call to action for the event? So it's great to give out food to people and let them try all this delicious vegan food that we have available to us. But then what are they going to do after that? We want to hear about, okay, you could send them to different challenges online or sign them up to an email list, just something to keep them engaged after that food sample or whatever your event is. So really just really having your event well thought out and well planned out, and then providing as much detail as possible will reduce the chances that we'll have further questions for you.
Yeah, and also completing that applicant profile as completely as possible. So if you're applying as an organization or on behalf of an organization rather, make sure to include some information about the organization and some evidence that if the organization is, not just an informal group, but is a registered nonprofit in your country or your community. We ask that you include proof of nonprofit status. And if you're a nonprofit, we ask for a little bit more documentation. So in the US, we ask for a 990 if available. In other countries, and the US as well, we want to see articles of incorporation or something that gives us a sense of what the organization's goals are and to make sure that they align. This is simply, this is a requirement for us as a grant maker to have this information when we're making grants to organizations. It's part of our due diligence. And so while we would love to just say, you know what, we've emailed back and forth with you, we know you pretty well, we really do need the full documentation, as well as the payment information. So if you're based in the United States, you don't need to enter, in fact, you cannot enter payment information in your application or your applicant profile. However, if you're a non-US applicant, we ask that you enter a PayPal account email. If you don't already have a PayPal account, we'll ask that you set one up. If you live in a country that does not allow for PayPal payments, then reach out to us and we can talk about other options. But PayPal is the most streamlined way and really the quickest way that you'll be able to get payment.
Yeah, and actually, in regard to that, this also answers a question in the chat. So we have recently started funding other organization types beyond just registered nonprofits and individuals. So we do now provide funding to for-profit organizations. Again, we ask that proof of organization status be uploaded to your applicant profile. But with that, there is a caveat in that we don't provide funding to the business, we provide funding for charitable outreach. So the same rules apply as an individual or nonprofit, where we ask that you do some sort of vegan activist event. And so if you're a business in the past, we would have asked that you apply as an individual, but now we no longer have that requirement.
Yeah, exactly. I see a question about, is it possible to let grantors know if they'll get their funding before the event? And we understand sometimes you receive the notice after the event has passed. Do you want to give some insight into that, Mikki? It's a community events grant.
Sure, yeah. So with this particular case, we do ask that applications be submitted at least 4 weeks in advance of your event, because we do award grants before the event takes place. If the application is submitted after the event takes place, then we generally don't award those. But in earlier, I guess late 2020, when we were having the switch to Zengin, it was a little bit of a hairy time for us. We encountered some unexpected delays with that go live, and it kind of slowed down our normal process. So there were some grants during that period that were a little delayed in getting approved. It was very unfortunate for everyone, but I feel like at this point we're really back on track, and our grant approval process is back to where it used to be. And so moving forward, we should be approving applications before the events take place, granted that they are submitted with enough time ahead of time.
Exactly. We really stress, if you submit your application at least 4 weeks in advance. Mm-hmm. Years ago, we have a lot of applicants who've been with us for the 10 years that we've been an organization. And we had a lot lower volume then. And so it was possible at times for applications to get turned around in a week's time. But VegFund has grown exponentially in the last few years. And so we've tried to, update our processes to meet that new demand. So we do strongly encourage you to, have your application as ready as possible 4 weeks in advance so that you can have enough time. And if you're doing an event, make sure you submit a community events application. Because of our new model, special projects applications are reviewed on a quarterly basis. So even if you apply 4 weeks in advance for an event in a special projects category, we may not get back to you until that due date time. So take a look at the website. If you have questions, reach out to me at leah@vegfund.org. We understand that so many of you are operating on a shoestring. You're volunteers, you're passionate about what you're doing outside of your regular jobs, and we know that it's not easy to meet all of our requirements, and we want to work with you. But we also have such a high volume of demand and requests that we really want to try to make sure that you're as prepared as possible, and we're as prepared as possible to meet your needs. So yes, thanks for the question, Sean, and hopefully in the future, now that we do have Zengin up and running, I want to plug you and thank you all for being patient with us during that transition, because we know it was our second grant management transition in as many years, and that's not something that makes it easy on you. So do let us know as you have needs for flexibility. What
So
else?
Leah, it looks like there is a question here from Darlene. Hello, do you fund work-like videos that support campaigns? I'm from
Oh yeah,
Nation Rising and thank you for past support.
cool. So this is another thing I wanted to talk about today. Obviously, during the pandemic, we've had to really kind of shift how we do outreach, and a lot of people are doing outreach videos, video series, webinars, podcasts, and those are all great. But we have received such a large number of these of requests like this that we want to really encourage you to make it clear to us that your video is unique, that it serves a role, or that you have a particular niche or an ability to market to a particular audience that advances the goal of your video. So yes, darling, we do fund videos and video series. We've funded several, and we even have some examples and activist stories on our website. But we do stress that now there's 5 years ago there wasn't as much information out there as there is now. And while it's always great to have new information, we don't want to just constantly be recycling the same information and reinventing the wheel each time. That's tough because it's a big world and we all can't get out and interact with each other, but we want our community to really think about how you can utilize what's already out there and build upon it to make something unique that's really going to send a message to people that maybe they haven't heard before, or reach an audience that maybe hasn't been reached before. So that can be tough. But again, we want to work with you and we want to make that possible. So that would be my best advice for applying for a video grant, is to use the special projects application and to really make your case as to how this video is going to offer something new or reach a new audience. How often are applications accepted? So if you're doing an event, just like a one-time event or a week-long event or a Veg Fest or street outreach, we accept those on a rolling basis every day of the year, and we tend to take about 4 weeks to get back to you. If this is a long-term project, we have a quarterly acceptance cycle. So the next due date for special project applications is April 15th. And after that, if you don't meet that deadline, that's okay. You can apply again by July 15th. And all of this is on our website. We accept those applications on a rolling basis, but we review them quarterly.
And those applications, the link to the application can also be found on our website. So if you go to vegfund.org, there's a big button on the top that says apply. And then that will take you to where you can choose between applying for a community event grant, a special projects grant, or an online campaign grant.
As far as the typical size of a grant, it really varies. And it's, our average grant size tends to be about $1,000, but our median is higher than that because we have funded some larger projects. For special projects grants that are ongoing, what I typically say to people is, if you're an organization, VegFund doesn't want to be exposed at more than about 5% of your annual budget. So think about how a grant from VegFund fits into your entire project budget, particularly if you're an organization. Think about how much of that is going to be applied toward programming and how much of that is going to be applied toward administration. We really want to keep administrative costs to under 20% of the project. We recognize, though, that people make projects happen. So if there's a way that you can express in your budget how the person, if you're trying to fund, say, a person's salary, you really want to tie that into the program aspect. Funding salaries is something that we typically just have not done for various reasons, but it typically is about kind of how we're exposed to the full budget of an organization. So while I can't give you like an average grant size, I can sort of give you a sense of how to build your budget, and I hope that's helpful. What other questions do we have here, Mikki?
Sean asks, where does VegFund get its funding?
Yeah, VegFund gets our funding from private donors, and so we haven't typically asked for donations because we're a funder. But as we've gotten larger and we've had more demand for our funds, we're always in search of more funding to offer. And so if that's something you feel like you can do, even at a small level, we encourage you to take a look at vegfund.org/donate. And yeah, we're funded by donors.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we support more than campaigns and events, such as assistance with hiring staff?
Yeah, so maybe I helped answer that question. As far as staff, again, I'll say that because we're a grant-making organization, it's hard for us to provide that core support across multiple years. So if the project requires the hiring of somebody, we want you to be able to show us in your application that there's a plan for having that person be sustainably funded moving forward, say 3 years out. And that person should really be focused on program delivery, whatever the program is that you're trying to have funded or that you're trying to promote or implement.
Okay, we also have another question. We are a political podcast for vegans. Are we even eligible due to political speech?
So funding political things is tough because we are ourselves a 501c3. We can't fund anything that is specifically like lobbying the government. We can't fund, obviously, political donations. So I would say to you, Amy, to make your case as to how your podcast is really trying to reach non-vegans, trying to spread a message about veganism, or try to encourage people to consider plant-based. Maybe that's part of like a political strategy, or part of thinking about how to vote, and that can be a gray area. So I would say make your case as to how this really fits into our goal and our mandate, which is to support vegan outreach to the non-vegan public.
Great. So we have another question. Are there particular campaigns, events, or advocacy outreach that VegFund is most excited to fund?
Yeah. Do you want me to start, or?
Well, I think from a community events perspective, some of the things that I look for and that make me really excited is the impact something where maybe a large population could potentially be reached. So if you're out on the street doing street activism, are you going to be in a location where there will be a lot of people walking by to really increase that outreach? And then also, I like events that have a nice call to action. So really sending people with a direction, because I've mentioned this before, where you can try a piece of delicious food. The Beyond Burger is delicious and you get a bite of it while you're walking down the street, but then what's the next step? So it's always great to see advocacy projects that have something for the person to do after they walk away. So is there a piece of literature that you can hand to them, or a video that you can show to them, or a challenge that they could sign up for? Something to give them a concrete next step so that they feel empowered to do something after that. What about you, Leah?
Well, one thing that we're really excited about this year and trying to do more is fund projects that are focused on the health aspects of veganism and a plant-based lifestyle. And one main reason for that is that we've seen the rise of that argument as a compelling one for the non-vegan public. It is something that is growing and we're seeing a lot more of. I think the film Game Changers was a spark for a lot of people who were thinking about how to be healthier, how to be stronger. But we have started to really look into funding projects that work with nutrition staff or medical professionals. And we actually have a fantastic webinar on our website. If you go to vegfund.org/resources, there's a webinar from Dr. Shireen Kassam. She founded Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. She's herself a physician. She's based in London. And you know, she talks about how if you're a medical professional or you're working in that field, how you can take that knowledge that you have about, or your passion for being vegan, and really use your efforts to advocate for veganism and for plant-based living. We're also looking at more youth engagement, so humane education projects that really focus on scalable outreach to youth, whether it's in a school classroom or in a Zoom classroom these days, as well as trying to reach food or school cafeterias. We see that as a really cool, scalable way to make a change and to introduce plant-based ideas and behaviors. That said, we fund, you know, our funding runs the gamut. So while those are things that we're super excited about, to answer your question, there's a lot of other projects out there, and I'm sure there are things that I should be mentioning that are escaping me. But one great way to see what we're excited about funding is to look on our site at our activist stories, because we really do try to feature stories that we think are compelling, that we think will teach other activists something, and that are using methods that we really think are engaging and effective.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, for the online campaign grant, are there any particular requirements for social media? So yeah, for online campaign grants, I will say we're not asking for you to promote VegFund. I'm reading the question again, and metric reporting. So when we are asking for metrics, this helps us understand the effectiveness of the campaign. So at the outside of an online campaign application, we ask you to define what is your conversion. And this is because online campaigns allow us a lot more hard data than other projects. And so for us, a conversion is signing up for a vegan pledge, or watching a video start to finish, or signing a petition, or what have you. So for YouTube and Instagram, there are different insights there, and you may need to define your conversion a little bit differently. But more and more, I think those tools, Instagram is so popular, and I think now there's more and more ways to define a conversion, whether it's taking people to a site, having people click on a link in your bio. For YouTube, it could be watching the full video, and then going to a link after the video. I hope that helps answer your question, but if not, definitely email me.
We have a question here. We are running a plant-based cooking program for kids with a focus on eating plant-based to be environmentally sustainable. Is this still eligible if we don't talk about animal activism? Absolutely, because there are different approaches to veganism, and people go vegan for different reasons. As long as the message is still fully plant-based, completely vegan, then yeah, talk about the environmental sustainability of it, because that's an important aspect of this lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of us who came to veganism from an animal perspective, it's hard for us to leave that piece out of the conversation, and yet that piece of the conversation isn't right for everyone, particularly kids. When you're talking to kids, there are different ways that you want to express that humane ed, whether it's, whatever it may be. And introducing plant-based behaviors is, I think, a really great way to instill that at a young age, and make it, something that's that's available, something that they see more often. I think one of our jobs as vegan activists moving forward is to just continue to stress that there is so much vegan food that we're already eating, and it's not just about meat alternatives, but making that feel comfortable to people and to kids can be tough. So finding new and innovative ways to do that is always awesome. Lots of shout outs here. Good to see you. Good to see you, Deanna. Hello, Tom. Could you provide examples of grants that got approved in the last 12 months? Yeah. I would say, so first thing I would say is to look at our activist stories. And even particularly recently, there's a great couple of blogs about how activists are adapting during COVID. And there are great examples there for projects that we've been funding. Let's see, I'll try to give you one example recently.
From the community event side, people have been switching to online events. So they're still hosting film screenings. Some groups are still hosting VegFest, but they're just doing it online. So they're hosting Zoom events, and some of the online VegFests have been very interesting because they've still partnered with their local vegan restaurants, but then they have those restaurants available for delivery during the VegFest. So it's still that event where you get to go and listen to speakers and learn about all these products and still support local vegan food. So that's been a way that people have really done a great job adapting. Same thing with film screenings. They'll have a Zoom meeting or some other platform, and they all watch the movie. And then because it's remote, they'll have a Q&A with the directors afterwards, or just some sort of discussion to follow up.
Yep, totally, yes. Yeah, and again, I'll point to that blog. There's a really cool video from Indie Veg Fest that talks about how they went about doing an online Veg Fest, and they walk through it really nicely, and I found it helpful if I were going to plan something like that.
Right.
Let's see. How much to focus on grants versus pursue other avenues for raising funds? Yeah, I understand. This question about how do you balance when you're a small nonprofit, reliance on grants versus reliance on something that's a little bit more sustainable over time. So I think for VegFund's funding, because we're a relatively small organization with a relatively small budget, our grant-making budget is typically about $2 million a year, but that's often split up into 1,000 or more grants. So to give you a sense, and all of this information is available online because we are a nonprofit. VegFund's not an organization that's able to provide that consistent core funding over a long period of time, over a period of even more than 2 or 3 years. And one of the goals we have for this year is there's a long way to answer this question, Nital, about how do you focus your funding, and it's a webinar that we're hoping to do by the end of the year, because it is a struggle. There are a lot of other grant resources out there, and we actually do have a source on a page on our website. I will, if you want to email me, I can send it to you, but you can also just search it at vegfund.org/resources funding. And we have a list of all sorts of other sources of funding that are available. If you're a nonprofit, having a capital campaign, having a way to raise funds from individual donors is really key, and is often a way that small nonprofits continue to exist. I think that can be tough if you don't have a dedicated fundraising person. But trying to think about what parts of your year you're focused on fundraising, trying to think about how you're telling your program story so that you can use it to fundraise, rather than just simply relying on grants, which can sometimes be uncertain.
Here's a question about our grant process approval. So what this grant process looks like is if you've never logged into Zengin before, you'll create an account in our grant management system, Zengin. The first thing that you'll do is fill out an applicant profile. So that's where we gather information about you. You can edit that at any time if something changes. And then you'll submit your application. So you'll submit either a community event, special project, or online campaign. And then that application will be sent to us. We review the applications. If we have questions, we'll send it back to you or reach out to you with questions and clarifications or asking for more details. If we do that, then the application will come back to you. You can edit it, make those updates, and then resubmit. And then if your application is approved, it will send you an award acceptance. So that's where you're going to read our terms and conditions and see how much you're awarded, what your reporting due date is, and then you'll electronically sign that document. And once that is done, then you're ready to go off and do your event. So you have your outreach, you complete it, and then afterwards you're going to submit a report. And that's where you tell us about how the event went, and how many people you interacted with, and you'll answer those questions, and then you'll submit that report. Again, we'll review it. If we have questions or need more information, we might send it back to you, and then if your report is approved, then it'll go into the reimbursement stage.
Yeah, so that's something that's important to mention, is that our community events grants are issued as reimbursements. Mm-hmm. And that means that we receive paid receipts and a description of the project that took place in order to make a payment. Special projects grants. So the question too was about whether we do interviews for project budgets that are in the range of 5,000 and up. We very well might ask for an interview if it's something that we're interested in pursuing. And we have a review committee, and they could reach out to you as far as asking for an interview. It would be something that you would know about well in advance. It wouldn't be something that you'd have to, scramble to prepare for. And also to consider our application cycle for special projects grants. So thinking about, okay, when are applications due, and when should I expect a decision? Somewhere in between then, you may receive a question from us. It may just be like a quick email, or it could be a request for a more lengthy conversation, or just generally more information.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Doctors for Nutrition, I see your question about lobbying. So yeah, I think it sounds like your project is more related to advocacy. We do fund advocacy, and I think that it could be something that is eligible. I would ask that you just reach out to me, and we can talk about that specifically, and whether or not what activities might serve as lobbying. The more you get involved with IRS regulations and things like that, the more your head spins. At least I find. So regarding music videos, this is again, I want to say, I can't say yes or no about a particular project, but I will say that the best way to receive funding or to receive to have a successful application is to really make your case that your video is promoting veganism in a way that will reach a non-vegan public, that is really targeting the people who you think will be susceptible to that information, who will really receive that information where they are. Music videos and art projects tend to, it's harder to make that case. And so there needs to be some kind of explanation or call to action. And that's just simply because of our mandate to support vegan activism. Many of us on our team are artists, and there's no doubt the power of art in a movement such as ours. It doesn't always necessarily fit with our evaluation guidelines. But I'm not saying no. I'm saying, you know, think about how it might fit with our guidelines, and all of our guidelines are on the website. I'm realizing we have 52 comments, so I should be scrolling a little bit faster.
Leah, so if a vegan advocacy organization is seeking funding for several special projects at once, would you rather them submit 4 to 5 special project grant applications at once, or include them all in one application with a breakdown of individual projects inside that one grant for you to decide which parts you might be interested in funding?
I'm not sure. You know, it really, that's a question I can't probably answer in a quick response. James, definitely reach out to me if you want to learn more, if we can talk more about what you have in mind. My email is my first name, Leah, L-E-A-H, @vegfund.org. And Mikki's is her first name, M-I-K-K-I, @vegfund.org.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, running a large vegan festival, what would be the largest amount that we can apply for?
So I think we pride ourselves at VegFund on not giving strict category amounts for how much people can apply for any of our grants.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have a specific number that we give for Veg Fests or for food samplings or whatever. So we just ask that you provide a detailed budget and request what you need to request. And then we'll take a look at your application and look at the budget that you provide, and then we'll decide how much from there.
Let's see, a question about funding workshops, skills workshops for activists that will help them get involved with direct action more safely and well informed. You're right, we don't fund direct action specifically, but we do fund, we do have a place in our budget where we fund projects that are about building skills. So that would be a special projects application, and you might select, you might select the learning tools, and again, make your case as to how this workshop is, you know, really gonna is not only going to reach, you know, activists who are going to do activism, but how then you might track the impact of that. And that can be tough, but it can be as simple as a survey that goes out 3 months after the workshop, or it could be, you know, a way that you are staying in touch with folks. We don't fund a ton of skills-based workshops, but we do fund such things. Let's see. Hopefully my answer about music videos helped. Again, so for like designing a website, that's really a core cost, and it's something that we can support in part, probably not in full, and what I would say is that we're more interested in funding the outreach piece of that. So obviously a website is outreach, but how is that website going to be viewed by other people? How are you marketing it? Are you doing Facebook ads? Things like that might be a little bit more in line with what we would fund in our online campaigns program. Let's see.
We have a question. We did the first vegan bodybuilding championship in the world. Is this something that VegFund would possibly fund? That's an interesting idea. Since it is the first one in the world, we wouldn't have encountered that application before. So yeah, my suggestion would be to submit an application for it and provide all the information that you can and lots of details, and we'd review the application.
Yeah, I'd say as long as the event is really focused on not just, you know, being a bodybuilding championship for vegan. I'm assuming this is for vegan bodybuilders. So you'd want to think about how that event is going to be reaching non-vegans. and how you're going to use the content or ideas or whatever is going on at that event created to reach other people. So that could be inviting people to attend. You know, I would just make sure that it's really about how that event is going to reach other non-vegans, because again, we want, you know, our mandate is really to make sure that we're promoting veganism to the non-vegan public.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a question here about food banks. And this is something we've seen a lot more, especially during COVID. And in 2020, we expanded our funding to fund feeding programs more than we ever had. Feeding programs are not typically something that fits within our mandate. And we have received a ton of awesome applications for feeding programs that are focused on giving nutritious, plant-based food to those in need. And that's an important piece of our movement. It's just not something that we have traditionally done. We don't have the expertise necessarily set up to evaluate what makes a great feeding program versus another one. So what I would say is, you know, a good feeding program is that we might consider funding as one that really focuses on that educational component, how it is encouraging a plant-based lifestyle beyond the actual feeding itself. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just trying to think about the best way to talk about feeding programs. Mikki, you've encountered some feeding programs. Do you have a sense of, you know, how do you think about feeding program?
Yeah, well,
a scalable impact and some kind of a call to action is really helpful. Yeah. You know, it's one of those things that I think we would love to fund more of if we had more space in our budget to really fund that kind of activity. It just doesn't always fit as activism. However, it's something that we don't discourage people from applying for. It's just something that's relatively rare for us. But I think, you know, if you wanted to reach out to us directly, Viral, yeah, I see you're not associated directly with the Toronto Vegetarian Food Bank. But it could be something that would be eligible depending on how the outreach was conducted.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Do you need to have a specific amount of followers or subscribers to apply for an online grant campaign? No, you don't need to have a specific number, but what you do need to show is that you've had at least 2 years of running an online campaign. So we want to see that you are, you know how to, you know, use social media in an effective way that really focuses on a call to action, that really tries to target people well. There is such a wealth, and you know, there's just so much information out there about how to do a successful online campaign. It's a tough thing to do, but you know, if you've done it for a couple of years, then you've sort of learned the kinks and tried to figure it out. So that we're more interested in seeing that you have a plan and experience than an actual number of followers. I'm seeing a few questions about like the lobbying and outreach to government question. Meeting with politicians and talking to them about plant-based food is typically fine. The issue is really around lobbying for a specific bill. But I don't want to promise, I don't want to get us in trouble with the IRS by saying anything. It gets a little complicated when you're talking about reaching the government. So those of you who have been asking about government outreach and things like that, just please reach out to me directly and we can try to figure out if your project would be eligible.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I see my colleagues from VegFund. We have Patrick, our social media manager, and he's probably commenting here. And thank you, Patrick, for saying we're doing our best to respond to everything. But obviously, we can't respond to everything. So if you do have questions, you can reach out to us. Again, my email is my first name, Leah, @vegfund.org. And Mikki, your email is?
Mikki, MIKKI, @vegfund.org.
Yep. And we have a contact form on our website. We did find recently that some of those messages have gone to our spam, and we are so sorry if that is the case. But we are, we're working quickly to respond to all of those. And now that we know that some of those messages have gone to spam, we're going to be checking our spam folders a lot more. But yeah, all this to say, VegFund's a relatively small team, and we keep it that way so that we can spend most of our money on funding your work. That's important to us. Just as we've said, it's important to see that the projects you apply for are focused more on programs than actual core funding. As our movement grows, we're seeing more and more people want to spread the word of veganism, which is awesome. It just means that we've had to adjust our systems a little bit. We've had to adjust our policies a little bit. And it's taking us, it's going to be a growing pain situation for all of us, but it's a good problem to have. So, great. So we have about 4 minutes left. I'm going to keep scrolling. I think we missed a comment. Let me check here. Carlos, I apologize. Yoga, massage, okay, I see. So as far as promoting vegan products, that's something that, it depends on how you're promoting vegan products. If you're promoting your own vegan products, that's not really something we fund. We don't fund, for example, like directories of vegan businesses, simply because there's so many of those out there, and it's just not where we want to spend our funds. So Carlos, if your project really can make a case for spreading a vegan message and reaching a non-vegan audience where they are, and really it sounds like you're probably focused more in a space that would target certain people versus others, which is always great, right? We want our activism to be targeted. The spray and pray approach doesn't always work. So think about whether or not your project is really trying to reach a non-vegan public, and doing so in a way that has a call to action, that as I've said, promotes veganism, and does so in a targeted way. So I hope that helps, Carlos. And if I haven't answered your question fully, do reach out. Oh, hi Denise from China. Good to see you. This is great. Well, I've seen people from all over the world, which is so exciting. It is one of the best parts about working at VegFund. It's just how many different people we fund. We fund people from 30 plus countries, and hope to continue doing that. So we've got 2 minutes left, so maybe we should wrap up. But we weren't sure. I'll say we weren't sure going into this if we'd fill the full hour. So this is so exciting. Thank you for such an engaged discussion. And do tell us if you want to see more of these. This is our second AMA that Mikki and I have done, and I think it's something we'd like to try to continue to do quarterly. So please let us know. So Viral, top success stories, again, I'm going to point you to our website because I don't want to duplicate the efforts of our amazing communications team. They've written up some awesome activist stories and a recent blog that covers a lot of great projects. There's too many for me to say. I've been a part of funding over thousands and thousands of projects. So I would definitely encourage you to check out the site. So glad that it was helpful. Thank you all for all these great comments. Really, really happy to see it. And happy to, at least communicate with you, if only through a screen. But But once this pandemic's over, we're coming for you. We're going to be giving hugs to all of our activists. We're going to be showing up at your Veg Fest, so watch out. Cool. Well, yep, so Estella, our awesome communications associate who has written some great blogs recently, she's posted a couple of activist stories here. Patrick on social media has been responding to questions as well. And you know, if you have time and you haven't yet, please like our Facebook page, please like our Instagram page, or follow us on Instagram rather, and just continue to do the amazing work that you're doing. We're so grateful. We exist because of you, and we thank you for your efforts. Anything else, Mikki?
No. It was great hearing from everyone, and yeah, I look forward to doing this again in a few months.
For sure. Cool. Well, thanks everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy. You know, virtual hugs from over here at VegFund, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.